The air was hot and heavy that afternoon, and 12-year-old Aaliyah stood on the sidewalk, clutching her backpack with trembling hands. She had just been pushed down at school for bragging too much, and now, when she needed someone to believe her most, the police officer in front of her smirked. "Your mom's in the special forces." "Please," the cop chuckled, shaking his head. "Little girls like you always make up stories." Aaliyah's dark eyes welled up, but she refused to look away. Her braids, tied neatly with blue beads, shook as she whispered, "I am not lying. My mom saves lives. She's a soldier." The officer's laugh cut through her heart like glass. People walking by slowed down, some even pulling out their phones, recording the moment. Aaliyah felt small, like her voice did not matter. But inside, a storm was rising. Every insult she had heard before, "You are too young. You are just a kid. Nobody important," echoed in her ears. Yet she stood straighter, lifting her chin with quiet dignity. "Tell me this then," the officer sneered, folding his arms. "If your mother is really some secret hero, where is she now? Why is she not here protecting you?" The question sliced through her heart. Aaliyah opened her mouth, but no sound came. Her chest heaved as she fought back tears. What the officer did not know was that her mother, Staff Sergeant Naomi Brooks, was closer than anyone expected. And she had just returned from a mission. At that exact moment, across the street, the sound of combat boots striking the pavement echoed like a drumbeat. Heads turned. A tall woman in uniform, her presence commanding yet calm, walked toward them. The laughter on the officer's lips faded as whispers filled the air. "Wait, is that?" someone muttered. Aaliyah's eyes widened. Hope rushed into her chest like sunlight breaking through a storm. Because the woman walking toward them was her mother. And she was about to change everything. The officer froze as the woman crossed the street. Her steps were firm, measured, and deliberate, each one louder than the last. The murmurs of the crowd grew restless, cameras raised higher, the air charged with anticipation. Aaliyah's chest pounded. She whispered, almost breathless, "Mama." The tall black woman in fatigue stopped in front of them, her sharp brown eyes locking onto the officers. Her posture was perfect, her uniform crisp, but it was her voice that silenced the crowd. "Did I just hear you call my daughter a liar?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. His confidence cracked, but he forced a scoff. "Ma'am, with all due respect, kids exaggerate. She was just saying you're in the special forces." The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile, not warm, but razor sharp. "Exaggerate," she repeated slowly, her voice carrying authority that seemed to weigh on every ear. She reached into her pocket and pulled out an identification card. The Special Forces emblem glinted in the sun. Gasps erupted around them. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, she is real." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears, not of pain but of pride. For the first time today, she stood tall behind her mother, her little fists unclenching. The officer's face flushed red, his smirk vanishing. He stammered, I did not mean." But Sergeant Naomi Brooks cut him off. "You laughed at my daughter for speaking the truth. You made her feel small in front of strangers. Tell me, officer," she leaned closer, her voice steady as a blade. "Is that how you protect the community? By mocking a child?" The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. People began murmuring, some shaking their heads at the cop. Aaliyah stepped forward, her voice trembling but strong. "I told you, my mom saves people. She is braver than anyone." The officer swallowed hard, but pride kept him standing tall. "Look, lady, I was just doing my job. Kids lie all the time. You cannot expect me to take everything seriously." Naomi's eyes darkened. "And yet, a real threat could be ignored because of that attitude. Do you know what that costs? Lives. Trust. Innocence." The crowd grew quiet again. A child tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered, "She's a hero." The officer looked around, realizing the tide had turned against him. His hand twitched toward his belt, not in threat but in nervous habit. The energy between them crackled, tense and unpredictable. Then, from the corner of the street, the sound of engines roared. Black SUVs turned sharply into view, pulling up in formation. The crowd gasped again. The officer blinked, confused. What is this?" Naomi's expression never changed. She simply said, "Back up." The doors opened. Men and women in uniform stepped out, their presence overwhelming, their eyes scanning the street. The officer paled, and Aaliyah's heart raced. Because whatever was about to happen next would change her life forever. The street fell silent except for the rumble of idling engines. Doors slammed shut in near-perfect unison. Soldiers stepped onto the pavement, their boots striking the ground like a drumbeat of authority. Their uniforms bore the same insignia as Naomi's. The crowd instinctively parted, whispering as the soldiers fanned out in a protective circle. The officer's jaw tightened. His bravado evaporated, but his pride refused to let him back down. "What is this? Some kind of show? You can't just..." One of the soldiers, a tall man with medals across his chest, cut him off. His voice was deep and commanding. "Sergeant Brooks, do you require assistance?" Naomi lifted her chin. "No threats here, Colonel. Just a lesson being taught." The officer looked between them, his face paling. "Wait, Colonel." His voice cracked with disbelief. This is military business." The colonel's gaze swept over the crowd, then landed on the trembling Aaliyah. His expression softened. He lowered himself onto one knee, his eyes level with hers. "Are you the brave one who told the truth?" Aaliyah hesitated, then nodded, her curls bouncing. The colonel smiled warmly. "Then you have something every soldier here respects. Courage." The crowd erupted in applause. Strangers who once stood by silently now cheered for the little girl. Naomi placed a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder. Her voice softened, but her words cut like steel. "See, baby. Truth does not need permission. It just needs strength." The officer shifted uncomfortably. Sweat glistened on his forehead. "Look, I think this whole thing is getting blown out of proportion." The colonel stood tall, his eyes piercing the officers. "No. What you tried to blow off was a child's dignity. That is not small. That is everything." Gasps filled the air. Phones were raised higher, every second being captured. The officer's face was no longer the face of authority. It was the face of shame. But Naomi was not finished. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a chilling calm. "When you laughed at my daughter, you told every child watching that their voice does not matter. But today, you will show them something different." The officer blinked. What do you mean?" The colonel crossed his arms, his presence towering. "You will apologize. Here. Now. In front of everyone." The crowd fell silent again, hanging on every word. Aaliyah's small hand clutched her mother's, her eyes wide with hope. The officer's throat worked as he swallowed hard. His pride battled with the pressure of 100 eyes staring, recording, judging. Finally, he opened his mouth. But before the words could leave his lips, a voice from the back of the crowd shouted, "Wait. There's more you all need to know." Everyone turned. And what they saw left the entire street in stunned silence. From the back of the crowd, a young woman stepped forward. Her suit was sharp, her stride full of authority. She carried a briefcase and a badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. "I am Attorney Mariah Ellis," she announced. Her voice carried strength that silenced every whisper. "And I was sent here by the board to oversee community relations. I have witnessed enough." The officer's knees nearly buckled. The board," he stammered. Naomi tilted her head, her calm expression never wavering. "Seems like justice walks faster than lies, officer." Mariah opened her briefcase, pulling out documents. "Sergeant Brooks," she addressed Naomi with respect, "the complaint you filed weeks ago regarding misconduct, it has been reviewed. Today's incident confirms it. Effective immediately, this officer is suspended pending investigation." The crowd erupted with cheers. Phones shot higher into the air. The officer's face drained of color. His bluster was gone. For the first time, he looked smaller than the little girl he had mocked. Naomi turned to her daughter, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "Do you see, Aaliyah? Justice is not always instant, but it comes. And when it does, it stands tall." Tears glistened in Aaliyah's eyes. "Mommy, I was scared." Naomi pressed her forehead gently against her daughter's. "Courage is not the absence of fear, baby. Courage is speaking even when your voice shakes." The colonel placed a hand on Naomi's shoulder. "Sergeant, you honored the uniform today. Not with rank or power, but with truth." The soldiers saluted. The sound was crisp, echoing through the street like thunder. The crowd followed with applause, some wiping away tears. The officer, cornered by his own pride and shame, finally forced the words out. His voice cracked. I am sorry. But the apology felt too small, too late. Naomi did not gloat. She simply rose, holding her daughter's hand. "Aaliyah does not need your words. She has the world's respect. And that is something you can never take away again." The crowd parted for Naomi and her daughter as they walked forward, soldiers flanking them in quiet honor. Every step they took was victory, not just for them, but for every silenced voice that had ever been told it did not matter. As the cameras rolled and the applause thundered, one truth remained clear. That day, a little girl's courage humbled an entire system. And the world would never forget it.